Okay. This story is called One-Eyed Goldfish. So last year I was living in Boston, and that was my third winter. By far the worst. If you didn't know, it was like record-breaking snow. Snow forever, snow for 3 months, every day. So one of the many issues that these storms caused was that the subway, and the bus system would be behind anywhere from like 30 minutes to an hour and a half. The bus that I would take in to Harvard was the 66, and at this point in time, it was running 45 minutes behind. Now, another issue was if a huge group of people are waiting on the same bus and it finally comes 45 minutes later, what happens? A quarter of those people get on the bus and then you're waiting for another 45 minutes, right? So I had several depressing playlists that I would play over and over again and just like ruminate in the fact that I was freezing to death. So I would also play this game in my head while I was listening to music, and I would look at the crowd of people waiting for the bus, and I would do top 3, who would I marry? So I'm scanning, no, if you were the last person on earth, maybe. And I see this little boy. He's probably like 6 or 7 years old, super tiny. The first thing that I notice is he has no gloves. And at like this particular day, I think it was like 15 to 25 degrees. I couldn't tell you. Once it's that cold, it kind of all blends together. So I'm paying attention, the next 10 minutes, and I realize that he's by himself. So the first thing I do is I go up to him and I say, "Where's your mom?" He said, "Well, she had to go to work, so she said that the bus was gonna be here, and so I'm waiting." And I said, "Dude, like, first of all, like, let me give you my gloves." So I give him my gloves, and he looks at them and he says, "These don't match." I was like, "Yeah, they never match, okay?" So he was like, "All right, fine." So he puts on my gloves. Now I don't have any gloves, it's not the point, but so I'm just standing there and I'm like, what do I do with this? My phone had 2% because I was like, "Do you want to call your mom?" And he was like, "I don't know her number." At that point, people around, they can hear me talking, but no one's like wants to collaborate and be like, "What should we do? Should we call the police or whatnot?" The 66 pulls up, and I could have had a spot. Like, as I'm stepping up, I turn around and he's still there by himself, this tiny little boy in the crowd. So I was like, "Ugh." So I walked up to him and I said, "What is your name?" He said, "Evan." And I said, "So what is your plan now? Like, what are you going to do?" And he said, "Well, I know that school's that way. You walk down that street." And I was like, "Okay, well, there's that street over here." And I said, "Okay, the one by Twin Donuts." He said, "Yes." And he's like, "Then you go down the street for a long time, and there's a church on the corner. And then you go up the hill, and my school is there." So I'm thinking, like, I wish I could Google where this school is so I can get a general idea, because he doesn't understand. So he says, "Well, I guess I'm going to start walking." So my instinct is I followed behind him, and I tapped him on the shoulder. And I said, "Evan, I know you're not supposed to talk to strangers. I totally get it. But here's the thing. I'm going to work, and I happen to work over there." And he said, "Well, where do you work?" I said, "I work at that church, the one on the corner." "Okay, well, what do you do there?" "I clean the church, and that's what I do." So the point is, stop asking questions. The point is I'm going in the same direction. So I'm not actually following you. I'm just going to the same place, essentially. Does that make sense? And he gives him this look like, whatever. So he starts walking, and please understand that this is a very busy intersection. It's one of the busiest intersections in the neighborhood that I lived in. So this kid gets about 3 yards before the walking sign. I don't know what that's called. And there is a giant snowbank that is like almost as tall as he is, and he's like trying to put his foot through. So I lifted him up and placed him over the snowbank, and then I fell over the snowbank, and then he looked at me, and I held out his hand. So now we're holding hands and we cross the street. We don't talk for a while. And then I say, okay, well, are we kind of close? He's like, not really, okay. And he said, well, you know what? Me and my mom, we take the 57A sometimes. Like, I love this plan because there's a sign right there that says 57A. So we're waiting there. For some reason, this bus route was not going into the city, so it wasn't the 45-minute wait thing. But I mean, it could have been behind. I don't know. People seemed angry. So the woman stops and I say, excuse me, I have this kid we need to go to. She's like, this isn't the 57A, this is a 57, and I'm not blah, blah, blah. I said, look, I like need to get him to school, like long story short, and people on the bus was like, get on the bus! I'm like, oh. So she says, like, what are you doing with this kid? And I'm like, are you a sister? And I said, no, like I found him. Like, so I kind of break it down for her really fast. I'm like, look, like all I know is that his school is by the church. And she was like, oh, I know what you're talking about. That's not on my route. I'm like, can you just figure something out? And this poor little kid, he can't even see over the window. So she looks at him and she says, sweetheart, what? Can you tell me like what direction he can't see? So I like lift him up, I'm like, can you see? He's like, yeah, it's that way. So she's like, I've never done this in my entire career at the MBTA, but I'm going to go out of my route one stop so we can get him there. You can hear some people in the front like, come on. So I'm just like super nervous and upset because I know this kid's upset. And I was like, look everyone, we've already made it clear that we're all 45 minutes late plus to work. It's really not going to matter, okay? Can we get this child to school? I said the F word in front of the child, and so she starts going, and this tiny little child is in this big bus seat, and he looks like he's gonna cry at this point. So I'm like, fuck, like what would I do? And so I sit next to him and I say, hey, I'm really sorry I cussed in front of you. It's like, it was like make, pretend, believe stuff. He's like, okay, whatever. So I decided to strike up a conversation with him. And I say, do you have any pets at home? And he says, well, yeah, I have a cat, but the cat doesn't do anything because he's really lazy, so we don't play. And I said, oh, okay, cool. He says, oh, I also have a fish. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. When I was your age, I also had a fish. And this is a cool story. My dad took me and my brother to a carnival at our daycare, and there used to be this game where there are several clear plastic cups. Are you following me? Several clear plastic cups, and you have to get the ping pong ball into the cup, and there are goldfish in it. Real goldfish? Real goldfish. I recognize that this was like inhumane at the time. They probably don't do it anymore. Anyways, my dad spent $10 until I got a ball in the cup of goldfish, and I won a fish. So the cool thing about my fish is that it had one eye. One eye. We named her Pearl. And the other cool thing, what? Lived to be 10 years old. So that's a lie, but whatever. So he was like, that's really old, and I said yes. And so at this point, she's like, hey, I think this is his stop. I said, I have to like pick him up, like, that's the church? That's the church. And then he tells the busser, he's like, that's her work. And she was like, okay. She's like, this is like getting like weirder by the minute. So I let him like step down the steps, and she looks at me and she said, girl, you're something else. And I was like, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So she drives off, and he says, well, thank you, Constance. Now we walk to your work, and then I go to school. And I said, well, you know, I'm already late, it doesn't matter, so I'm just gonna make sure you get to school. This hill was an entire incline with black ice. So if you're unfamiliar, black ice is black ice because it's ice over the asphalt, you can't see it, and you bust your ass all the time. There's no way this child could have walked up the hill to get to his class. So here we are holding hands again, and we get to the door of the school, and his class is like the first one, and it's at the time where the teacher stands outside and is like, okay, like get in here, shaking hands with the parents. And I I said, okay, I guess this is goodbye. And he says, okay. And I said, you can keep my gloves. Okay, I'll see you later. Okay. So he turns around, and then the teacher's like, who are you? Are you his father's new girlfriend? And I was like, no, I'm not. Are you his sister? No, it doesn't matter, because if I try to explain it to you, you're not gonna understand. But I broke it down for her very fast, and before I could finish, Evan comes walking back. And he said, excuse me. And he said, come here, he whispers to me. And he's like, do you think I'll ever have a one-eyed goldfish like you? And I said, you know, if you play your cards right, maybe, but don't go make a one-eyed goldfish, okay, buddy? He's like, okay. He's like, okay, bye. And he walked away. So, I told the teacher, I said, you have to promise me you're going to contact CPS, nothing like this will happen again. She's like, don't worry, we're on it. So I'm walking out, and I realized that now my phone has 1%, and so couldn't Uber, didn't really know where I was at this point. And I text my boss, and I'm like, hi, just letting you know, I'm not just 45 minutes late, now I'm gonna be 3 hours late. And I was like, but you know, there's a story behind it, and I'll tell you when I get there. And she just put, oh, ... a story, looking forward to it. And then the next day I called the elementary school, and I said, I know you can't divulge that much information to me, but I just want to know if he's okay. And they said that it had been taken care of. So to this day I still think about Evan, and I wonder if he has my one pink glove and my one blue glove. The end.